Welcome to California in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. As the city of Los Angeles faces a significant deficit, Mayor Karen Bass has proposed some significant changes to this year's budget. Joining me to tell us more is California reporter Kenneth. Tell us, Kenneth, what are the changes that Mayor Bass is proposing?
Hey, Eliana. So the city of Los Angeles faces about a $500 million deficit due to lower tax revenues and overspending relative to what was initially allocated. Overspending has mostly been concentrated in overtime for police. When you have fewer officers than required, but you still need to deploy officers to reach coverage, they end up paying much more per hour for overtime because that's what's required in pretty much any employment contract in the United States. The other cost overage is from increased liabilities payouts due to all sorts of lawsuits. If the city has a sidewalk that is just 1 degree in height over what the Americans with Disabilities Act requires, they can get sued for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The city is just sort of flooded with these lawsuits. So the entire budget has been cut this year by about 2.3% compared to last year. Notably, though, the only budget increase was for the police force to hire more officers. So ironically, they can spend less money per hour on those officers by not having as much overtime. Second of note, though, is that the Inside Safe homelessness program, where homeless individuals are essentially put into hotels and provided significant social services, that was cut by about a third. That originally had a $250 million budget last year. This year will have a $65 million cut. And
that program, they're currently considering auditing it, correct?
Yes, the Los Angeles City Controller announced that he is auditing the Inside Safe program to see if it functions and whether or not it functions, to see if the money is actually being spent as promised. Because this program is extremely expensive. This program costs $17,000 per homeless individual per month. On an annual basis, that's more than a tech salary. That's more than you need to even buy a house. In Los Angeles, the median home price in the city of Los Angeles is $1 million or so right now. So that you could give someone a house or an apartment for that kind of money, but it's not really clear whether it's working or not.
And part of the budget shortfall you mentioned was just not having the revenue they expected. Does this have anything to do with the real estate tax?
Yes, there's this tax measure called Measure ULA that was approved by voters in 2022 that was supposed to raise $600 million and $1.1 billion per year. It was called a mansion tax, but really it was a tax on any real estate transaction over $5 million. Unsurprisingly, that includes pretty much every commercial real estate or multifamily real estate deal in Los Angeles. And the economics of this work out so that you're really wiping out about most of the profit that the developer makes. If they're building and if they buy a lot, buy a vacant building, demolish it, replace it with something higher value that drives higher property tax revenues. There's something called Prop 13 in California that causes taxes to be based on the price of what you bought something for, not what it's currently worth. And so redevelopment is one of the things that can trigger the rebuilding and reassessment. So for cities like LA, it's a huge benefit when a low tax rate property is demolished and replaced by a much higher value property that's now assessed at its current value, instead of something that was bought in like 1970 for $10,000 being taxed at $10,000. What's ended up happening is ULA only is going to be expected to raise $270 million. Multifamily real estate investment is collapsing in the city. People are just not selling their properties over $5 million at the same rate that they were. I think many are just waiting for this tax measure to even be repealed. There's also the fact that high interest rates are making new development, even purchasing of properties, unaffordable for potential real estate developers or landlords. Remember, developers take out loans for most of the money. They put up very little of the capital themselves. So if interest rates are high, they essentially just paying interest on loans when they're not building and selling projects. And in California, which has some of the longest development times in the country, it means they have some of the highest real costs of interest because the time from getting the loan to finishing and selling the building is the longest. And this real estate effect is like just pounding the city's bottom line because most of its revenue comes from real estate property taxes.
And Los Angeles isn't the only California city that's facing some economic concerns. San Francisco isn't looking too good either.
Right. S&P Global Ratings recently downgraded its bond outlook for San Francisco, which had even weaker performance in Los Angeles, from neutral to negative. And this means they're going to pay higher interest rates for any money that they're getting loans for in the future, which coincidentally gives them less leeway to implement costly new programs. It does seem to be that an affordable way to increase property tax revenues would simply be to allow more real estate development within the city of San Francisco, which does have some of the highest housing costs in the country. But it appears that there's a lot of local resistance to that effort.
Well, Kenneth, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Attention parents, teachers, and taxpayers. Do you care about the decisions being made in K-12 public education? Do you want to know how those decisions impact your students and school district? Chalkboard News has you covered. We're delivering fact-based reporting on the policies that shape school safety, curriculum, and recovery from learning loss. At Chalkboard News, we're cutting through the politics and focusing on the facts behind the issues impacting students, teachers, and families. Get this news delivered to your inbox for free by signing up at chalkboardnews.com.